Before I begin creating my design, I wanted to prepare Fusion 360 for some use. First, I created a project that I'll be storing my data in. I'll reduce the data panel with the Hide Data Panel tool. The next thing I want to do is make sure that I'm working with the correct units. I happen to think in feet and inches. It's more comfortable for me, so I'll change my unit type to inch. Now, all of the components that I build or the bodies that I build in Fusion 360 will automatically take on that unit of measure. I can change it or override it at any time while entering dimensional values. The next thing I want to do is start to think about the structure of my design. My design is only going to have three types of part: a side, a slat that will make up the seat and back of my lounger, and then a wedge that I'll use to hold it all together. So what I'll do is go to the root of my design, right-click, and from the context menu, select New Component. I can rename it. I'll be very creative with my name. I'll call it Side. And I can tell by the radio button activation that it is presently my active component. The next thing I'll do is I'll begin sketching. I'll start the line tool from the sketch panel, or I can select it from the marking menu by going down and hovering over the word sketch, which will bring up another marking menu that will give me my common sketching tools. So I'll select line, and I can choose the plane that I want without having to pick directly on the plane. I'll use the XY plane. I know it's the XY plane because X is represented by a red axis, Y is represented by a green axis, and Z with a blue axis. So I'll highlight the one that's red and green and pick. Now what I want to do is just start roughing in a sketch. I'll go ahead and use my origin just to be able to give me an idea of where I am. I'm going to come out in the ballpark of about 6 inches at maybe around 115 degrees, but I'm not going to enter any values. In fact, I'd like to kind of create this sketch without creating a lot of dimensional values, just to kind of ballpark it in place. You can constrain it as much or as tightly as you want, but I'm going to see what I can do without being so constrained. I'm going to return back to the endpoint of my line while still in my line tool, click and drag to create a tangent arc. I'll rough in my tangent arc and release the mouse button to start beginning to place another line. I'll move to where I can see the tangency icon appear near the endpoint and go up a distance that I think will suit my needs. I can always pan and zoom to get a different point of view. I'll click again and just start roughing in my line some more. I want to create another line that's not quite parallel with the first. Continue creating a tangent arc off of that line and a tangent arc off of that tangent arc. I'll then just bring my line down to roughly parallel with that first point. Back a bit. Back up a bit. Using these technical terms like bit or a little. But that's one thing I would want to focus on is I don't want to over design this. I just want to have this overall design kind of flow a little bit. And then I'll close my sketch. And as soon as I do, Fusion 360 lets me know that it's closed by coloring the area of this enclosed sketch. Now I can add more dimensions or make modifications to this. I can even do things like adding a fillet to the sketch. So for example, I'll add a fillet between that arc and this line, and I can just simply drag the dimension or drag the radius value that I want to get the look that I want. Without using a lot of dimensions, you can still drag and pull, manipulate some geometry around, although it is a little more sensitive without having dimensions in place. But for what I'm trying to do, which is to just simply get an idea of what I want, this works perfectly well for me. I'll add another dimension. I'll add a dimension from the base here to the very top to get an idea of how tall this is. And I think I'm going to make this just a little bit taller. We'll say 32 and see what the effect is. That's okay. So now that I have that dimension placed, I can just grab the geometry and move things around a little bit, and it will add some more control to how things are shaped. I can window select and grab geometry and move it more as a group. Pulling things out, let me re-grab and get a different set of geometry. There, just getting a different feel. And then I can add some sketch constraints. For example, I can add a coincidence or a collinear constraint rather between my first line and my bottom line here so that I have a level footing on the ground. And then let's go ahead and make one more little modification here. Give myself just a little more volume to work with, a little more wood to work with, and I'll call this good. I'm going to stop my sketch, and I now have a completed profile. The next thing I want to do is start to convert this into 3D geometry and start to add additional sketches and additional pieces of 3D geometry until my site is complete.